Shoot, 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 shoot.
Hey y'all, welcome. It's your man Ren City, host of Sports and Shorts of Sorts. Doing the NFL recap, just how we've been doing every week. We're going to jump right into week 9. What a crazy week of football we had here. I didn't do the Thursday game because I'd already covered that. My last prediction didn't get it in time, so I'm hoping this one's in time so I can get the Thursday game picks in. But hey, let's jump to Sunday, just where I was going before I interrupted myself. But anyway, NFC South battle, you had the Saints and the Panthers. Derek Carr, he was coming back to town for the Saints, and he'd lead the Saints on a nice drive going into Panthers territory, but only settling for a field goal, taking the early lead. And in that game, you'd see a dangerous play with Chris Olave going down the middle of the field and getting obliterated. Numerous flags thrown on the play. Olave would have to get carted off the field after laying on the ground for a while. And this is a guy that's had concussions over his career, and it was later announced that he was doing better, and he shouted out people for thinking of him, but the ball thrown to the middle of the field, that was the big discussion about Derek Carr and throwing these balls that Robert Griffin III has labeled hospital balls, saying you ought to protect your receiver where you throw the ball on the field, leading him into a play like that. The NFL's changed where you can't just have those massive head hits, but the way the defense lines up, these guys are missiles running at each other. And in the middle of the field, it's dangerous, but hopefully Chris Olave is okay. The game went on. Saints got another field goal from Groupie. Panthers would go on a nice drive. They'd finish the drive off with Bryce Young finding rookie Xavier Legette with a 3-yard touchdown, doing its dollar bill celebration in honor of his horse, since the Panthers led 7-6. Saints would they'd lead the ball down the field again, going to Taysom Hill on a big play. He'd barrel his way into the end zone. The 30th rushing touchdown of the Swiss Army knife's career, and the Saints led 13-7. Panthers were looking for some late points, and Legette would pick up an injury leaving the game, and Carolina would add a late field goal, going up 13-10. And in the second half, Panthers went on another drive, getting into a first-and-goal situation where Canadian Chuba Hubbard punched it in, putting the Panthers up 17-13. Saints got another field goal to make it 17-16. And early in the fourth, the Saints were looking to take a lead, with Derek Carr throwing a high ball to only where his tight end Foster Moreau could snag it, putting the Saints up again. They'd go for two, but they wouldn't convert. Holding to a 22-17 lead with just under 12 to go in the fourth. Bryce Young looked good leading the Panthers on a drive. A defensive pass interference on a chuck ball to Miles Sanders did help. And a few plays later, Alberta's own Chuba Hubbard showed off that patience, getting a touchdown 16 yards out. His second of the game. They'd failed to convert for two and led 23-22, but their defense did enough, stopping the Saints, clinching the win. Only the second of the season and only the third of Bryce Young's young NFL career. I'm happy for him. You can see the smile on his face. The guy's been through struggles in the league, so happy he got the win there. And for New Orleans, yikes. Great stat from ESPN's Bill Barnwell. The Saints outgained the Panthers by 150 yards, ran for 150 plus yards, and won the turnover battle. And over the last 20 years, teams have gone 275-0 with that formula. It is now 275-1, so that's not good. And some bad history for Derek Carr there. The loss to the Panthers. Derek Carr is the first quarterback in NFL history to lose to 31 different franchises. There's only one team missing from the Carr's collection, and that's his former team, the Raiders. And get this, the Saints host the Raiders on December 29th. We could see some history there. Probably history Derek Carr wants no part of, but I did mention Derek Carr's critiques online for the hospital ball he threw to Olave, and it was coming from a former teammate, former wide receiver Michael Thomas. After the throw was going online, beaking Carr at one point, saying, "Dude, scary and panic. Just throw the ball. Get him the F out of here. He's so ass." Not grammatically great, but it was a shot. And Derek Carr, after the game, when asked about the comments, said, "I don't know what I did to him. I don't know why he feels in any type of way. I'm sorry for whatever he's dealing with to make him feel like he's got to do that. I don't know." So it was a high road to take for Carr, even though he doesn't know what's going on. It seems like no one really does with New Orleans. They're losers of 7 in a row. They're looking like the darlings of the league after the first two games, but that seems eons ago. Two clubs going in different directions. One in the NFC South basement at 2-7. I mean, they're both at 2-7, but they feel like two different 2-7s. And the day after the loss to the Panthers, the Saints said, "You know what? Enough is enough." They fired Dennis Allen, so he's out of town. That loss to the Panthers was the final nail in his coaching coffin in the Bayou. So good for Carolina, not so good for the Saints. And that brings us to an NFC East battle with the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. The Giants were looking to move the ball down the field. Daniel Jones took a hit and fumbled the ball. The ball was blown dead, which Commanders weren't thrilled about, but they still got the turnover. They didn't get the touchdown, but got the fumble recovery. Wasn't that big of a call, though, because a few plays later, defensive PI would set the Commanders up deep in the first and goal situation, and Jaden Daniels found Terry McLaurin on a 1-yard pass, putting the Giants up 7-0 anyway. Giants looked to respond, did so in a big way, moving the ball effectively, capping the drive off with Daniel Jones, finding Chris Manhertz on a 2-yard touchdown pass, 2-yard touchdown toss, tying the game at 7 early in the second quarter. Commanders looked to answer that touchdown with one of their own, and after a long drive of their own, Commanders would hand it off to Austin Eckler, who punched it in from a yard out, putting the Commanders back up 14-7. The dying seconds of the half, you could hear the commentators warning Jaden Daniels not taking a play out of bounds, running the clock with no timeouts. And just as they were saying that, he'd throw a perfect ball to Terry McLaurin in the end zone. The second touchdown connection for those two made it 21-7 for Washington going into the break. Commanders started the second half with the ball, but went 3 and out, and the Giants needed points on a few different occasions, converting on fourth down to pick up first downs, and they'd face fourth and goal and score a touchdown, but there was an offensive pass interference, pushing them back, forcing new kicker for the Giants, Jude McAtney, to kick a field goal, and they trailed 21-10. The Giants were again looking to get some points, and Daniel Jones found Slayton on a big play to get in a first and goal situation, or Daniel Jones would end up running to the outside, trucking two Commanders on the way to the end zone, a touchdown with his arm and one with his feet. And that 2-yard physical run cut into the Commanders' lead. The Giants went for 2, didn't get it, so they still trailed 24-16. Commanders would immediately march down the field, going the Giants' territory, but they couldn't get to the end zone, forcing a Seibert field goal and increasing their lead to 27-16. Giants got the ball back and were hungry for points, moving the ball down the field with Danny Dimes hanging in the pocket, taking a big hit as he delivered a nice long ball to Theo Johnson on a 35-yard touchdown. Again, the Giants went for 2, and again they'd fail, trailing 27-22. The Giants needed a big stop, and Daniels gave them something that would really kill them. A 42-yard play on to Zacchaeus to get deep in the Giants' territory, throwing a Giants penalty, plus another first down by Chris Rodriguez, the third-string running back for the Commanders, and they'd set up a victory formation, holding on to the 27-22 win, moving the Commanders to 7-2, the best record the Washington team has had since 1996. And for the Giants, another tough loss for them as they dropped to 2-7 on the season. You have an AFC East matchup, a rivalry battle between the Miami Dolphins and Buffalo Bills. The first two scores of the games were field goals. Tyler Bass opening it for the Bills, and Miami's Jason Sanders tying it up. You go into the second quarter tied up at 3, and the Bills were deep in Dolphins territory looking for a touchdown. And Josh Allen put it right into the hands of rookie Keon Coleman, but the ball was tipped by the rookie, and Jalen Ramsey showed off the concentration, making the red zone pick. Second interception in as many weeks for Josh Allen after he started the season without throwing one in the first 7 weeks of play. The Dolphins took advantage of that turnover by marching down the field, capping the drive off with Tua Tagovailoa finding Devon Achane on a 14-yard screen pass, put the Dolphins up 10-3. Then the Bills would go deep in the Dolphins' territory, but a holding penalty moved them back, and then Josh Allen would scramble in for a touchdown. But again, holding penalty negated it. Back-to-back holding penalties forced the Bills into a field goal, cutting the lead to 10-6 going into halftime. The Dolphins opened the half with the ball and looked to try to get some more points, but Raheem Mostert would have the ball chopped from behind. Miami would fumble, losing it to Buffalo, and Buffalo took advantage of that turnover, going to a first and goal situation. The Bills would get stopped 3 straight times. Going for it on fourth down, Allen would find Mac Hollins in the back of the end zone, and that 1-yard touchdown put the Bills ahead. But Tyler Bass missed the extra point. Buffalo only led by 2, 12-10. Dolphins looked to answer and were moving the ball down the field, but the Bills forced a field goal. And because of the Bills' extra point miss earlier, Miami now led 13-12 in the third. The Bills had no time responding. 2 plays after giving up that field goal, Josh Allen found running back Ray Davis out of the backfield. He broke some tackles before showing that speed off, getting to the end zone. Huge 63-yard touchdown, put the Bills back ahead. Josh Allen would find rookie Keon Coleman, who made up for that earlier drop by securing the 2-point conversion and putting the Bills up 20-13. Dolphins needed to respond, and they'd face a 4th and 3 on the drive. A lane opened up for Tua Tagovailoa, who'd scramble on the first down, diving head first as we all collectively gasped. He picked up the first down. The Bills challenged it, but lost the challenge. He picked it up. Not much contact on the play. It looked good. He survived, but man, with his head injuries, you don't want to see him diving head first. And a few plays later, Achane would scamper in a touchdown from 8 yards out, his second touchdown of the game. This one on the ground, and that touchdown tied it up at 20 early in the fourth. Bills would look to answer, marching down the field, and deep in Dolphin territory, they'd get some help with defensive holding. And 2 plays later, Allen would try to scramble outside, but was forced back to the middle where he just got obliterated. But he'd flip a dangerous ball to the end zone, very Patrick Mahomes-esque, where it was caught by tight end Quentin Morris. An absolutely ridiculously looking 2-yard touchdown, and Tyler Bass, still a little nervous after that other extra point, banked this one in to make it 27-20. The Dolphins were needing a touchdown. They'd have Jalen Waddle go down while he was blocking. His ankle looked a little gimpy, but he returned to the game, which was good for them. Later on the drive, Tua would find Waddle in the end zone, a 7-yard touchdown pass, tying the game, at 27 with just 98 seconds left on the clock, and we'd get to see the nice Penguin Waddle celebration. Bills didn't have a lot of time left, and with only 1 timeout in their pocket, they'd get the ball as far as they could, facing 4th down with just 10 seconds left. Sending Tyler Bass out there, who was a little shaky, but they'd say, hey, I know you've missed some kicks, but let's try a 61-yarder to win it. No trouble with 61-yarder. Nailed it, probably saving his job in the process. It went through with 5 seconds left. A little bit of pitchy woo-woo wasn't in the cards for the Dolphins. Big loss of yards for any players that had them in fantasy leagues, but big win for Buffalo. Broadcaster of the game, former NFL quarterback Trent Green, said whoever had the ball last would win, and he was pretty close with that prediction. A big 30-27 AFC East win for Buffalo, taking a stranglehold of the division while possibly ending Miami's slim playoff hopes at the same time. The Bills now move to 7-2, increase that AFC East gap. 2-6 Dolphins in 2 games. Tua has been back from injury. They've lost both games by a combined 4 points, and it's looking more and more like a lost season for the Dolphins. I mean, there is enough firepower to go on a winning streak, but enough to make the postseason? I'm not sure. Our next game, the Chargers, they faced off with the Cleveland Browns, and they'd get a great punt return from Darius Davis. 53-yard return set them up nicely, where Justin Herbert would find a wide-open Joshua Palmer. 27-yard touchdown was the first touchdown catch of the season for Palmer, and the Chargers led 7-0. Browns would answer with a Dustin Hopkins field goal to make it 7-3, but the Chargers answered in a big way. Herbert skying a ball deep for Quentin Johnson, who secured the catch and scored on the 66-yard touchdown, putting the Chargers up. But extending their lead, but more uncertainty with Cameron Dicker, the kicker, as he missed another extra point. Already his 3rd missed extra point of the season, and the Chargers only led 13-3. But the Chargers went on another drive, and they'd finish it off with a 16-yard J.K. Dobbins touchdown run. This time Dicker hit the extra points, make it 23. The Browns were looking for any kind of points to start the second half, moving the ball in the L.A. territory, but then Jameis Winston was looking for Jerry Jeudy in the end zone, and his pass was tipped by Tarheeb Steele right into the hands of teammate Elijah Molden. That pick ended the Browns' drive with a touchback, and it was Jameis Winston's first interception thrown of the season since he's been instilled in the lineup. And Cleveland was still looking for points, forcing Winston into a tough throw. Looking downfield, he only found LA's Alohi Gilman making the interception, the second for Winston in the game. And LA didn't do much with that still, so Winston was still trying to get points, and for the 3rd time in the second half, he threw an interception. This time Still, who had helped set up the first interception of the game, would get one of his own. And this time the Chargers would get points off a turnover, a Cameron Dicker field goal, except he'd miss it. This one 44 yards out, his 2nd missed kick of the game. He had the missed extra point, now the missed field goal. His 2nd missed field goal this season, and the Chargers still led 20-3. The Browns went full Browns as they attempted to add points with a field goal. Dustin Hopkins slipping on the approach, and the kick was blocked, giving LA great field position. And as they were trying to run down the clock, J.K. Dobbins would rack up the yards and rack up his 2nd touchdown of the game, punching one in from 7 yards out, extending the lead to 27-3. Late in the game, Cleveland would get their first touchdown of the game. Jameis Winston found Cedric Tillman into the corner of the end zone, and a ridiculous catch, 17 yards out, cutting the lead to 27-10, making the score a little more respectable in defeat. And big time win for the Chargers, winning 27-10 on the road, moving to 5-3. While the Browns were never really in this game, the offense struggled. Nick Chubb in the ground game couldn't get going, and in the second half, when Winston went hero ball, it looked more like zero ball because the Browns dropped to 2-7. Patriots and Titans, a matchup featuring two teams with a combined record of 3-12. You had your 2-6 New England Patriots visiting the 1-6 Tennessee Titans. The Titans looked efficient though, moving the ball against the Patriots, finishing the early drive with Mason Rudolph finding tight end Nick Vannett for a touchdown. The Titans led 7-0 early. Patriots were starting number 3 overall pick Drake May. I had mentioned in the last episode I didn't know if he'd go because of concussion protocol, but he passed the test. He was looking good out there. His legs were running for first downs, and the Pats tried a 56-yard field goal with Joey Sly, but he missed it, and they still trailed. So the Titans were in good position to add some points. They tried a quick throw inside the 5-yard line. The high throw hit the hands of tight end Okonkwo, and it was tipped right up in the air where New England's Tavai would make the interception. This time, this would lead to a Sly field goal, and this time he knocked it through to cut into the Titans' lead 7-3 going into halftime. And in the second half, Drake May led the Patriots on a nice drive, capping it off with a Ramondre Stevenson touchdown from a yard out. And New England took their first lead of the game at 10-7. Titans used some trickery to get in the Patriots' territory. The end-around flea flicker to the tight end. A crafty play with Mason Rudolph finding Okonkwo to get inside the 5. But a penalty took a Tony Pollard rushing touchdown off the board, and a few plays later, the Titans had to settle for a Nick Folk field goal, tying the game at 10. And with the game still tied at 10, there'd be a big turnover with less than half of the fourth quarter to go. Drake May looked to buy some time, but was hit from behind and fumbled the ball, giving the Titans great field position. The Titans took advantage of that turnover, moving the ball down the short field and finishing the drive off with Mason Rudolph finding Nick Westbrook-Akini from 6 yards out. The Titans were up 17-10. Rookie quarterback Drake May, he was looking impressive on a drive to try and tie the game. The Patriots couldn't get a field goal. They needed a touchdown, and they got deep in the Titans' territory and were faced with potentially the last play of the game. Drake May would scamper around back there with enough time, go to the bathroom, come back, and the play would still be going. And just as he was about to get hit, he threw a floater into the end zone, finding running back Ramondre Stevenson. And what a catch. Zeros were on the clock forever, and Stevenson's second touchdown of the game. Wow. People are debating whether it's a Hail Mary because it's from the 5-yard line. I don't know if Hail Mary is appropriate, but it's a clutch touchdown with zeros on the clock. What else do you want? Joey Sly, the little nervy there as he tucked his extra point in to tie it at 17 and force overtime. The Titans got the ball first, where they'd kill off almost 7.5 minutes of the 10-minute extra frame, kicking a Nick Folk field goal to go up 20-17. The Patriots would get the ball back with a chance with a field goal to tie or a touchdown to win, and May was looking for a home run, tossing a deep ball down the center of the field, where it was intercepted by Amani Hooker, the game-sealing interception, the second of the game for Hooker, clinched the OT win for Tennessee, only the second of the season, moving to 2-6 on the season, while the Patriots, the high of last week's win over the Jets, came crashing down with a tough OT loss to the Titans, dropping to 2-7 on the season. But Patriots fans have some optimism. That clutch touchdown as time was expired in the fourth quarter. That's where legends are born, Drake May. And if they can build off that, they should help this Patriots team, at least optimistic-wise, going forward. You had a matchup in the NFC with the Dallas Cowboys looking to end their 2-game losing streak on the road in Atlanta, taking on the Falcons. Cowboys started with the ball and moved it pretty well, setting up for a Brandon Aubrey field goal, getting the early 3-0 lead. Falcons looked to respond and did so, moving the ball very effectively down the field, where Kirk Cousins would find Drake London on a tough 9-yard touchdown pass. Great catch, except after the play, we found out London picked up a hip injury, and he would have to leave the game. The Falcons got the ball back, and after picking up a big fourth down conversion, they continued their drive where Kirk Cousins didn't see the hit coming, taking the sack where he'd fumble, and the Cowboys recovered. The Cowboys would get faced with fourth down inside Atlanta territory, trying a little trickery with CeeDee Lamb in motion, giving him the ball on the handoff. it had no chance. Disastrous turnover of downs, and the Falcons took advantage of that, getting faced with a fourth down of their own. A little trick play would lead to Kirk Cousins finding a very wide open Darnell Mooney. 36-yard touchdown put the Falcons up 14-3. Cowboys needed to answer, and you could see the urgency as they moved the ball down the field. Faced with a tough third down, Dak Prescott dropped back, running for his life, and just before you thought he'd take off, he flipped the ball to running back Rico Dowdle. The running back bobbled the ball as he fell to the ground, giving Atlanta's D Alford a chance to intercept it, but he bobbled it, and it fell to Dowdle, who was just laying on the ground, and he caught the ball. It was one of the weirdest touchdowns, a very Cowboy play with how their season's going, but it's a much-needed score as Dallas cut the lead to 14-10. And in the second half, the Cowboys were looking to punt the ball, but decided to try a fake. The pass from punter Brian Anger was nowhere close to getting completed. If anything, it was closer to getting intercepted. A turnover on down where the only anger that was good on that play was coming from the Cowboys fans, justifiably. In Atlanta, they took advantage of that short field, using Kirk Cousins finding Ray McLeod from 11 yards out, increasing the lead to 21-10. Just plays like that. What's going on, Dallas? The Cowboys would show off their amazing kicker, even probably the best kicker in the league right now. It's Brandon Aubrey knocked through a 57-yarder as the third quarter expired, cutting the lead to 21-13. Still a one-possession game. The Falcons looked to answer with some points of their own. Kirk Cousins buying some time before binding Bijan Robinson on a big gang. That set up the Falcons nicely, and a few plays later, Tyler Algier would score when the Falcons went full rugby scrum, powering in from 6 yards out to go up 27-13. Then things got a little worse for Dallas as Prescott was holding his thumb, but it looked like a hamstring was really bothering him, and it took him out of the game where we'd see backup Cooper Rush. Did I mention it was getting rough for Dallas? As Rush was looking for the end zone, he was looking for CeeDee Lamb, who failed to secure the catch. But bigger than that, it looked like he picked up a shoulder injury that required medical attention. He'd stay in the game, but it was bothering him. And in the dying seconds of the game, Cooper Rush found Jalen Tolbert on a 4-yard touchdown play. They'd go for two, where Rush found Lamb to make it 27-21, but that's as close as Dallas would get. The score made it look closer than it was, and Dallas lost their third straight game. And it's not good optics when you see your starting quarterback, who's dealing with an injury now, Dak Prescott, mouthing on the sidelines, "We fucking suck." Not a good look from the franchise QB. And the Cowboys dropped 3-5, and in a tough division where the Commanders are doing great, the Eagles are doing good, that could be tough. So I don't know if that title, NFC East title, is in their grasps anymore. Maybe a playoff berth, but that's going to be tough work too. The Falcons, they look good. Probably should have won by more, actually, but a win's a win. Kirk Cousins only had 5 incompletions on 24 throws, 222 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Man, it's looking like a pretty good signing, Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, as they lead the NFC South. The Falcons do with a 6-3 record. A game featuring two teams desperate for a win. You had the Las Vegas Raiders bringing a 4-game losing streak into Cincinnati, where the Bengals were coming off a brutal loss to Philly. The Raiders were visiting the Bengals and looked very un-Raider-like the way they were running the ball to start the game, and quite effectively, capping that drive off with a short touchdown run. They ran it in originally, but it was taken off the board. But a few plays later, Zamir White got into the end zone for real, giving the Raiders a 7-0 lead. Bengals looked to answer, getting deep in the Raiders' territory, and when faced with 3rd and goal, Joe Burrow rolled out before finding Canadian Chase Brown in the back of the end zone. The touchdown was tight, but stood, and we had ourselves a 7-7 game in the first quarter. In the second, the Bengals took the lead with an Evan McPherson field goal, and the Raiders answered with Daniel Carlson knocking one through, and we had a 10-10 game. Late in the first half, the Bengals were looking for some points, and a big roughing the passer penalty helped move the ball. Soon after, Joe Burrow found Andre Aceves, who dove for the end zone, barely breaking the plane, just barely. The replay showed he just got it. And in the second half, since he was moving the ball again, getting faced with a tough 3rd and goal, Joe Burrow rolled out again, running out of options before throwing it across his body to tight end Drew Sample. He'd secure the 2-yard touchdown to put the Bengals up 24-10. After the Bengals score, the Raiders were looking to answer, tried some trickery to get that running game going, which went back to its usual Raider ways after the start. And as Minshew went to hand it off to wide receiver DJ Turner, it was a bad exchange, which led to a fumble. And the Bengals were covering with great field position. And Burrow again showed off that pocket presence, buying some time before finding tight end Mike Gesicki in the end zone. 11-yard touchdown, great play where we'd get to witness one of the worst gritties in the NFL. That's when Mike Gesicki celebrates. His touchdown put the Bengals up 31-10. The Bengals were starting to get a little careless, though. Joe Burrow went to throw a quick swing pass to the sideline, and it was read very nicely by Jack Jones. It was telegraphed. He saw it coming a mile away. He'd pick it off and go 30 yards for the pick six, cutting the lead to 31-17 early in the fourth. Burrow made up for that turnover in a huge way, finding a wide-open Mike Gesicki, who brought it 47 yards into the end zone. Huge scoring play, second touchdown connection between those two. Second bad gritty we got to watch. Cincinnati led 38-17. They'd add another McPherson field goal, go up 41-17, and the Raiders were like, you know what, we've seen enough of Minshew today. Let's bring in Desmond Ridder, who was only on the practice squad a week prior. And Ridder found tight end Brock Bowers on a 22-yard touchdown play, cutting the lead to 41-24 to end the game. The garbage time touchdown was scored with just 41 seconds left in the game to make the score better, but maybe it was enough that Ridder showed the coaching staff, and combined with how bad Minshew played, maybe Ridder's going to get the starting job. There's a bye week for the Raiders, so we got to wait a bit, and it's a lot on the mind of Antonio Pierce, as the team had promised. They're 2-7 now. And Antonio Pierce just fired a bunch of people. Offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, offensive line coach James Craig, quarterback coach Rich Sangrello. They're all gone. So not only do we not know who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Raiders, we don't even know who's going to be calling the plays for that quarterback, whoever it is starting coming out of the bye week. Lots to think about for the Raiders. At least they got that bye week. And for the Bengals, it's just what the doctor ordered. Joe Burrow sharing the wealth, throwing 5 touchdowns. I mean, that disastrous pick. It was bad, but they had room to allow it, I guess. And the Bengals moved to 4-5, trying to stay alive in that tough AFC North. Broncos had a nice barometer in front of them as they headed to Baltimore, winners of 5 of their last 6, while the Ravens had a 5-game winning streak snapped where they were looking to try to bounce back from that loss against Cleveland. Number 12 overall pick Denver's Bo Nix threw an early interception against the Ravens, where they took advantage, getting deep in the Denver territory, capping the drive off with a 7-yard Derrick Henry touchdown, getting the early lead, and it was Derrick Henry's 100th career rushing touchdown, milestone moment for him. The Ravens got a big play when Lamar Jackson found Zay Flowers down the field, and there was a 15-yard penalty on the tackle where the Broncos defense stepped up after, forcing a Justin Tucker field goal, and it was 10-0 Ravens. Denver's offense needed to step up. Bo Nix started doing it with his legs, getting in the Ravens' territory. Defensive PI got them even deeper, but when faced with 4th and down, they'd look to try an end-around play, but it was turning into what looked like a Philly special, and Cortland Sutton threw the ball, and I got to admit, it was tight coverage, but Bo Nix showing he's got a little receiver in him, too. He's carrying the first NFL touchdown of his young career, and Baltimore's lead was cut to 10-7. Denver was feeling themselves after the touchdown, but Baltimore humbled them quickly, moving the ball down the field in minutes and finishing the drive off with Lamar Jackson rolling out and finding Zay Flowers in the end zone to go up 17-7. Denver looked to answer and moved the ball down the field again, with Bo Nix running in a touchdown with his feet, but a penalty took that off the board. And after failing to do anything from there, they'd settle for a field goal from Will Lutz and trailed 17-10. But the Ravens didn't want to go in the halftime with that score. And Lamar Jackson looked for his main man, Zay Flowers, on a 53-yard touchdown. 16 seconds left in the first half. Baltimore was up 24-10. Early in the second half, Baltimore would add more points. Derrick Henry, another rushing touchdown. This one from 6 yards out. The 101st of his career put Baltimore up 31-10. And the Ravens were starting to run away with the game. Late in the third quarter, deep in Bronco territory, Lamar Jackson used the play action before finding fullback Patrick Ricard out of the backfield. Rare fullback touchdown passes nowadays, but that put the Ravens up 38-10. They'd add to their lead with a Justin Tucker field goal to go up 41-10, and that's how it went. A huge blowout win for the Ravens, even though at one point this game looked close. The Ravens made up for that tough loss in Cleveland I alluded to the week prior, while the Broncos have showed us they're on the rise, just not at the level of a team like Baltimore yet, who have dreams of Super Bowl this season. But man, Denver exceeding expectations with rookie quarterback Bo Nix. I mean, this wasn't a great game for him against the Ravens defense that really had his number, but he's brought optimism to Denver, and they sit at 5-4 in the tough AFC West. And for Baltimore, when they get rolling, they're just something else. We might have the NFL MVP and Offensive Player of the Year behind the same offensive line here. Lamar Jackson, he's got to be up there for MVP, but so is Derrick Henry. I mean, think of what Henry does, but to think a quarterback has won the MVP every year since 2012. That winning season was Minnesota Vikings' Adrian Peterson, when he did eclipse the 2,000-yard mark, which is something Derrick Henry's on pace to do. But regardless of who wins the hardware of MVP, Offensive Player of the Year. This team has Super Bowl on the mind, and they moved to 6-3 as they try to keep pace with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC North. An NFC showdown with the Bears, Chicago Bears, to going to a desert to take on the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals opened the scoring in the matchup after a nice drive with Kyler Murray handing the ball off to the tight end, Trey McBride, showing his athleticism as he reached out to break the plane, giving Arizona the early 7-0 lead. The Bears, we'd see the rookie connection with Caleb Williams finding Rome Odunze on a big play to get in the Cardinals' territory. They'd stall there, settling for a Santos field goal. And when the Bears got the ball back again, another Santos field goal as they trailed 7-6. But the Cardinals were running all over the Bears and doing it with an array of backs. Trey Benson capped off a Cardinals drive with a 1-yard touchdown, going up 14-6. Before the end of the first half, you guessed it, another Bears field goal. Santos knocked it through to make it 14-9, going with 26 seconds left. And you thought, well, the Cardinals, 26 seconds left, they're going into halftime. No, with just 4 seconds left on the clock, Amari DiMercardo scampered 53 yards to pay dirt, scoring the big touchdown to put the Cardinals up 21-9. What a momentum swing going into halftime. And on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, I follow ESPN's Courtney Cronin. You may have seen her on Around the Horn. Her Chicago Bear coverage is amazing. Like, I don't even like the Bears. I'm a Packers fan, obviously, but getting access to quotes from head coach Matt Eberflus after the game regarding that game-changing touchdown by DiMercardo, Eberflus said, I called the pass defense, a pass pressure, and they ended up running the ball. And again, I can make a better call there. That's on me. You got to like the accountability, but you can't like what happened, you know? Instead of going in the halftime down 5, you're down 12. And in the second half, the Cardinals were moving the ball again, having to settle for their first field goal of the game. Ryland hitting a chip shot to make it 24-9. The Bears were moving the ball, looking to try and get points, picking up fourth down conversions. But when faced with another one, the Cards sacked Caleb Williams, turning the Bears over on downs, which turned into a 55-yard Ryland field goal. What a signing he's been for the Cardinals as they extended their lead to 27-9. The Bears got pinned in their own territory, and as DeAndre Swift was looking to throw a block, he threw a chop block, which is a penalty, and it is in the end zone, which results in a safety, similar to a holding penalty in the end zone. And that safety increased the Cardinals' lead to 29-9. Then we saw an interesting play as the Bears went to punt the ball. The Cardinals, after a safety, you got to give it up. And the Bears tried a rare onside free kick. And after the punter skied the ball, all 11 Cardinal players called for a fair catch. A very smart play that ensured they got the ball. And the Cardinals are running the clock down, 4th and short. DiMercardo had a bad play in this game, fumbling it on the exchange, giving it to Chicago, which had no impact on the game. So the Cardinals held on for the 29-9 win, leading the up for grabs NFC West at 5-4. And I talked it up all season because I actually had something going my way here. But I picked the Cardinals getting into the postseason before the season started. And Kyler Murray showing what he can do with this team. But as mentioned earlier, it's the running game for the Cardinals that's the difference. We thought the most dangerous part of a flying mascot would be its ability to move on the ground. I mentioned DiMercardo and Benson's touchdown runs. DiMercardo for 59 yards on 4 carries. Benson 31 yards on 8 carries. But in leading the way, it's the workhorse, James Conner, 107 yards on 18 carries. And they're all 107 punishing yards. The Cards outrushed the Bears 213-69, and that's just too hard to overcome. Tough loss for the Bears, who were out of the game for most of it. Caleb Williams looked really efficient with the running game not doing what it's supposed to. And things looked worse for the Bears in the dying moments when Caleb Williams limped off the field. It was said to be a tweaked ankle, and he's okay. So whatever that means, I'm thinking he'll be good to go for the next game. The Jaguars taking on the Eagles, a matchup of familiar faces and familiar faces. Jacksonville's head coach, Doug Peterson, going to Philadelphia, where he had led the Eagles to a Super Bowl victory. His struggling Jaguars were hoping to snag any kind of positive game in the city of brotherly love, and we'd see the Jaguars make a big mistake early. While retrieving a punt, Jacksonville fumbled the ball, giving the Eagles great field position, where Jalen Hurts would find Saquon Barkley in the end zone, the running back looking like a wide receiver, securing the 20-yard touchdown, putting Philly up 7-0 early. And it was the first time the Eagles put up points in the first quarter, only taking them until Week 9 to do it. And Barkley was running all over the Jaguars, and he pulled off one of the most amazing plays I think I've ever seen. He's looking like parkour out there. He caught the ball out of the backfield from Hurts, and he went full video game, leaping backwards over a defender. Yeah, it's insane. You have to see it. I mean, you've probably seen it, but you haven't. Look up Saquon Barkley reverse hurdle. It's crazy. I've never seen it, and I've watched football a long time. The internet's gone crazy with it. My favorite edit is someone's added the Rey Mysterio entrance music to it. Nice. I loved it. Eagles, they added some points through a Jake Elliott field goal to go up 10-0. And then the dying moments of the first half, the Eagles were looking for more points, handing it off to superhero Saquon. He'd run 19 yards for the touchdown. The Eagles tried to tush push for two, didn't convert, and they'd lead 16-0 going into halftime. And in the second half, the Eagles were again moving the ball down the field. Jahan Dotson, who's been quiet since coming over from Washington, made an insane bobble catch. He had no business of catching it, and he'd pull it down to secure the first down in Jaguar territory. Again, one of the best catches you'll see. This game was full of highlights. Scenes from this game, you could pluck them out and put them in action movies. I'm telling you. A few plays later, Hurts would follow his blockers for an easy 18-yard touchdown run, not even getting touched until he leapt to go over the plane. Jacksonville picked up a penalty on that play, and it would entice Philly to go for two again, trying another tush push, and again coming up short. The second failed two-point conversion had them leading 22-0. And the Jags needed any kind of a spark, and they'd get one. Tank Bigsby returning at 41 yards on a kickoff return, giving Trevor Lawrence some better field position. From there, Lawrence would lead the team down the field, capping the drive off with a quarterback sneak. Not a tush push, but a good old-fashioned quarterback sneak. The first score of the day for Jacksonville, and the Jags would convert their two-point attempt, with Lawrence finding rookie Brian Thomas Jr. in the end zone, cut the lead to 22-8. With the Eagles getting the ball back, Saquon Barkley was killing time, and he stumbled a bit and fumbled it as he hit the ground, with the Jags' Trayvon Walker picking it up, where half of the players stopped, half didn't know what was going on. No whistle was blown, so give credit to Walker for running it back for the end zone. The play was obviously reviewed. The Eagles players all hung out on the field, and it looked like just as Barkley was going to go through the hole that someone touched his foot. Or so we thought. All the announcers were like, yeah, this is getting overturned. And when the refs said the call stand, you could hear in their voice that everyone was shocked. Barkley looked shocked, but the refs said Barkley fumbled on his own doing, and Walker returned it for the touchdown, and it counted. A controversial call that went the way of the Jags, and the Jags went for two. And just like the Jags do when they go for two, they throw it to Brian Thomas Jr., who'd catch the pass and convert, cutting the Eagles' lead to 22-16. The Eagles would get faced with third down and have Jalen Hurts pick up a big rushing first down after Saquon picked up a block to even give his quarterback a chance to go for it. After getting stopped with a tush push earlier, head coach Nick Sirianni was getting in his own head a bit. He had the Eagles throw for it on fourth down, and it was a disaster. I think he outthought himself a bit, and the Eagles turned it over on downs while in field goal range. So leading 22-16, instead of making it a two-possession game, they went for it, came up short. I mean, it worked out because the Jags did nothing offensively and had the punt, and they pinned the Eagles deep, so they're like, ooh, what's going to happen here? But Saquon Barkley had a big run. Devontae Smith made a catch, another catch, including a 46-yarder to get the Eagles in the red zone. Some penalties put the Eagles back. 3rd and 22 wasn't looking good, thinking they'd settle for a field goal, except Hurts said, fuck your field goal, and looked for the back of the end zone, finding Devontae Smith. Again, another amazing one-handed grab in this game, keeping the feet in bounds. Like I said, this game was full of highlights. 25-yard touchdown, taking away any momentum Jacksonville was building. And then the Eagles said, you know what, we got to go for two again. And they fail again. Third time is not the charm. 3 failed two-point conversions. Insane. You could hear the crowd booing Sirianni's decision. But, I mean, they like to boo everyone in Philly. But the Jags would score quickly, going into the red zone in no time. Trevor Lawrence dropped back to pass. Saw kind of the Red Sea split there, where he'd run in his second rushing touchdown of the game, cutting the lead to 28-23. The Eagles killed some time, and they'd get their drive stopped, thinking instead of pinning them with a punt, let's try this 57-yard field goal. Elliott missed, giving the Jags great field position down 5. And the Jags were looking down the field, hoping not to get picked. They got lucky, though. They weren't picked. They got even luckier getting a defensive PI on Philly, getting the big first down. And a few plays later, the Jags were rolling. They were looking end zone, and Trevor Lawrence was throwing the ball, but he'd get picked by linebacker Nakobe Dean. An amazing interception, the first in the NFL for him, clinched the 28-23 for Philly as they moved to 6-2, trying to keep pace with division-leading Commanders. And it's amazing how the Eagles didn't blow this game. Numerous occasions of points left on the board by going for it on fourth down, attempting 3 two-point conversions and failing each one. I mean, it looks fine and dandy when you're converting those plays, but when it's not working, you're under the microscope of scrutiny. And like I said, the fans were already booing him on that third two-point conversion attempt. Like I said, Philly's booed Santa Claus, so that you got to take who they boo with a grain of salt. But questionable calls in the game, man. Sirianni's lucky the Eagles held on, or the media would have a field day with him. And yeah, they're sitting 6-2 though. So despite all my criticisms, I kind of got to eat my words. They keep winning, but I don't know. We'll see how this goes long term because this Eagles team is thinking Super Bowl. For the Jaguars, it's another tough loss for Jacksonville. I sound like a broken record each week saying that. They looked down and out, fought their asses back to get in the game. Granted, they had a few calls go their way, but they earned the chance to win the game. They were there, but they fizzled out again. The high-paid Trevor Lawrence throwing a game soul-crushing interception in the end zone. I mean, since he's got paid, his game's kind of regressed. Whether the two are related or not, I don't know, but it's the truth. So what does a 2-7 team do in the AFC? The AFC South crown's out of reach. I mean, mathematically, they're still alive. Could they go on a big run, get into the playoffs? I don't think they will. I feel like an idiot because I said this team could sneak in the playoffs. That's why I'm leaning so hard on that Cardinals prediction because that's all I got right now. This Jaguars team is not pulling it together. I mean, they've done it in chunks of games. It's just doing it over 4 quarters. It seems to be a big issue. The inconsistencies on the field in the biggest moments of the game. That's why you're 2-7. And you got to think the heat under Doug Peterson's seat's getting a little warmer. Big NFC West matchup with the Rams visiting the Seahawks in Seattle. And early in the game, Geno Smith looked for his wide receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba, except the ball bounced off his hands, off his face, into the hands of Rams' Jalen McCullough for the interception. The Rams opened the scoring with a Joshua Carty field goal, going up with the first points just 3.5 minutes ago in the half. The Seahawks looked for their first points of the game with Geno Smith throwing a perfect ball to Tyler Lockett, wide open, scoring on a 30-yard touchdown, except the Jason Myers extra point was blocked, and the Seahawks led 6-3. Seahawks quickly got the ball back, forcing the Rams into a turnover when Matthew Stafford was looking for points of his own. His pass intended for Puka Nacua was intercepted by Rick Woolen. And after the play, Nacua got into a scuffle with linebacker Tyrell Dodson, where Nacua threw a punch, which is an automatic ejection, and the star receiver, who's finally healthy, had to hit the showers early. And from that turnover, Geno Smith looked deep, finding Jackson Smith and Jigba, making a huge catch to make up for that earlier drop. And a few plays later, Smith went back to Smith and Jigba for the 24-yard touchdown pass. 5 seconds left on the clock, putting Seattle up going into halftime. LA opened the second half with the ball, and they led a nice cap drive with Stafford finding Demarcus Robinson on a 1-yard touchdown, cutting the lead to 13-10. And after the Rams touchdown, the Seahawks were faced with 3rd and a long, and Geno would find Smith and Jigba, but a penalty negated the first down, putting up 3rd and 26, leading to the Seahawks punting. The Rams got the ball deep in the Seahawk territory, and faced with 3rd down, Stafford had Derek Hall coming at him unblocked. Stafford rushed a bad throw, but the refs threw a flag for roughing the passer. I mean, it was a tough call on the Seahawks that set up 1st and goal, but Seahawks D backed them up and forced a field goal, and the game was tied at 13. The Seahawks looked to answer, and Geno Smith found Tyler Lockett on a nice back shoulder play to get the drive going. And the Seahawks got bailed out when Cody White went down the field and his feet were tangled with Rams defender. It resulted in a defensive PI on Ahkello Witherspoon, but the replay showed it should not have been a penalty. Simple tangle of feet, brutal call. But, I mean, it kind of makes up for the bad roughing the passer call on Stafford earlier. I mean, they're consistently bad. Is that a good thing? I don't know. But from there, the Seahawks made a play to get White the ball at the 6 for 1st and goal. So you're like, Seahawks are going to score here. On the next play, Rams rookie, 3rd-round pick out of Miami, Cameron Kinchins, he picked off Geno Smith in the end zone, returning it for a touchdown. Geno got nailed as he threw it, but what a turn of events. They were looking to score, but instead it goes the other way. The longest play of the NFL seasons thus far, 103 yards for the defensive touchdown, and the Rams went up 20-13 early in the 4th. The Rams, they were looking to punt the ball after not killing more time, and they were in their own territory, but it was blocked. Seahawks blocked the punt, recovering the ball, getting great field position inside the red zone, and when faced with 3rd down, A.J. Barner would leap over the defenders to pick up a 1st down, setting up 1st and goal. Great possession for the Seahawks, but again, Geno Smith would get intercepted by Rams rookie Kinchins. He wouldn't return it for a touchdown this time, but still, wow, a bad red zone interception for Geno Smith. Kudos to the 22-year-old rookie for his 2nd of the game. But the Rams, again, couldn't do much with that turnover and punted it back. Seattle got the ball back with under 2 minutes to go. Geno took a sack, and then the very next play found Kobe White. And if he was able to keep his balance, he probably would have scored on that play. It was a big play to get the ball moving, but the Seahawks would get faced with a 4th and 5, where Geno threw a perfect ball to Smith and Jigba going down on the 14-yard line. And on the very next play, Smith found Smith and Jigba again for a touchdown. This one from the 14 yards out, tying the game at 20 with just under a minute to go in the fourth, sending this game to overtime. Smith and Jigba picked up a huge play catching a ball from Geno on a play from a offsides play. And then the Seahawks were faced with 4th and 1 at the 16, where the Seahawks said, you know what, we're going to go for it in overtime. Walker didn't even come close. Big turnover on downs, and Stafford would throw a ball in the triple coverage where Tyler Johnson snagged it. Next play, Tutu Atwell, the Rams were moving the ball. And then a few plays later, Stafford rolled out, tossing it deep to Demarcus Robinson, who made a sick one-handed catch in the end zone. Walk-off touchdowns as the Rams steal the game in overtime in Seattle, 26-20. What a finish. Divisional games in the NFL usually aim to impress, and this one was good. Putting the Rams at 4-4 on the season, despite all the injuries they've faced and everything this team's dealt with. The Rams have done great under Sean McVay. You got to give credit to them. The Seahawks, they went full Jekyll and Hyde in one game. Geno made great throws, 21-34, 363 yards and 3 touchdowns. But 3 interceptions. I mean, that one was tipped, but the 2 red zone picks, they're killers. Killers. The Rams, they hung around long enough to cost the Seahawks the game. A big loss, too, as Seattle drops under 500 to 4-5. But big props to Jackson Smith and Jigba. You know, there was no DK Metcalf for the Seahawks, and he really stepped up, especially after that early bobble. That could have led him to a very bad game, but he took that early mistake, and he made up for it. 7 catches, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's the reason they were even in this game. In the NFC West, it is tight. The closest division in the NFL, with either of the 4 teams involved having a chance to win it. Go to a juicy matchup in the NFC North with 2 of the best playing teams in the NFL right now. The high-powered Detroit Lions going to Lambeau Field to take on my Green Bay Packers. The weather got a little wild, making it wet and nasty out there, and the Packers went on an impressive drive, picking up a 4th down along the way, but they'd have to settle for a McManus field goal to take the 3-0 lead. And the Lions would look to answer going deep in the Packers' territory. When faced with 4th down, Jared Goff and the Lions would go for it, and Goff would find Amon-Ra St. Brown in the end zone, scoring on the 3-yard touchdown, pulling off the excellent pencil headstand celebration. Sick photo on that one as the Lions went up 7-3. Teams took turns punting it away, but we'd see an ejection in this game. Jordan Love found Bo Melton, and as he was going down to the ground, he took a shot to the head from Lions Brian Branch. The refs had a little conversation before assessing more on the penalty. Branch got ejected from the game, hurting a defensive unit that's already been fighting injuries. The Packers took advantage of that penalty to get in the field goal range, but we'd see the first miss of Brandon McManus' early Packer career. Hopefully it's a one-off, because we've had kicking woes the last few years. The Lions would take advantage of that missed field goal by going down the field and getting one of their own to go up 10-3 with just 58 seconds left in the half. In a very wet game, you thought the Packers maybe would run the clock out, go in the half, but they're like, we got to get some points here. And deep in their own end, they tried to pull off a screenplay. The Lions read it a mile away. Jordan Love saw the play was dead, but tried to keep it alive a little longer, throwing a terrible pass where it was intercepted by Kirby Joseph, who returned it 27 yards for the pick 6. And instead of going into halftime trailing 10-3, the Packers were down 17-3. The Lions opened the second half with the ball and that lead, and they moved the ball down the field with that dangerous running game. When faced with another 4th and short in Packers territory, the Lions went for it. And on 4th down, Jahmyr Gibbs would easily scamper 15 yards for the touchdown. The Lions' offensive line just blew up the Packers' defense on the play, giving the Lions a 24-3 lead. Packers moved the ball pretty effectively in the rain, but once they got to the red zone, they fell apart, settling for another field goal to cut the lead to 24-6. Packers got the ball back, faced with 4th down, and Love tossed it deep to Reed, picking the first down up and keeping the game alive. Then on 3rd down, Love had Dontavian Wicks in the end zone, threw quite a bit behind him, which resulted in a drop. I mean, Wicks had a chance to catch it. It would have been tough, but it was dropped, and it would go to 4th down where the Packers tried to pick it up, but they came up short. It wasn't even close. It was a brutal series. I even had commentator Tom Brady going, I don't know what the plan was there. The Packers got the ball back late, and they'd finally get a touchdown. First one of the game, Emmanuel Wilson punching it in from 2 yards out. They go for two and convert with Love finding Christian Watson. They cut the lead to 24-14. Packers tried the onside kick, and it went right out of bounds. No chance. Lions running the clock out. Sealed the big win in Lambeau. A very impressive 24-14 win for Detroit. The third straight win they've got against the Packers in Wisconsin. The last time they achieved that feat was from 86 to 88, time where none of the current players on the squad were even alive. That just shows you the kind of positive shift Dan Campbell has brought to Detroit. And I remember when he was hired, everyone mocked the hiring. And this team, this was known as a filler team in the NFL. It was a low-hanging team, a low-hanging bar for mediocrity jokes, you know? That's what the Lions were. Now they're 7-1, winners of 6 in a row, leading the NFC North. Is this bizarro world? No, this is not a one-off anymore. This is real. They're a divisional foe, but it's hard to hate on this team. I mean, they force their will on you offensively, making you make adjustments for something that they're just going to counter and beat up on you anyway. I mean, offensive coordinator Ben Johnson has developed in one of the best offensive minds in the game. The way he's calling the game, the tempo of everything, it's something else. They have game breakers all over the field. That receiving core is speed everywhere. They get Jameson Williams back. We served that 2-game suspension. Weapons on weapons on weapons. That running game, Sonic and Knuckles. Jahmyr Gibbs or Sonic had 11 carries, 65 yards in that touchdown. David Montgomery or Knuckles, 17 carries for 73 yards. In the last episode, I said the Packers had a chance if they could stop that running game. They did not stop it very well. And we had another game where we had another interception from Jordan Love. And like I said, it was a bad one. On that play, just eat it. Go into halftime. What are we doing? That play gets you a few extra yards, maybe sets you up for a field goal. The risk reward on that is insane. I mean, I love that Love likes to extend the play and look for that play down the field, but sometimes the best play is no play at all. And I'm hoping he can nip this interception problem in the bud. It's gotten a little out of control. He still shares the NFL lead for interceptions. He has a new partner atop that infamous list. His 10 interceptions are tied with Seattle Seahawks Geno Smith, who, if you were paying attention earlier, threw 3 interceptions in that OT loss to the Rams. I mean, these guys are way too talented to be atop this list. But then you have Kansas City's Patrick Mahomes and Tampa Bay's Baker Mayfield right behind them at 9. So who knows? I mean, I'll get to those two quarterbacks in a hot second. But the 6-3 Packers find themselves in third place in the super tough NFC North. Jordan Love still seems banged up, but if he can just stop throwing it to the other team, we'd have a good time. This team's going into a bye week, and it's much needed because they're a little banged up, and they could get a little healthier. Which brings us to our Sunday night matchup, a tasty one between the AFC South's Indianapolis Colts, who had an eventful week after the loss to divisional rival Houston. Their franchise quarterback mentioned how he had to come out because he was tired, putting head coach Shane Steichen in a tough spot because he had to discipline his young quarterback. He did so by putting Anthony Richardson on the sideline while sending old Joe Flacco back into the starting spot. Those 4-4 Colts were heading to Minnesota to take on a Vikings team who looked vulnerable, losing 2 games in a row after a 5-0 start. Joe Flacco had the Colts moving the ball pretty nicely to start the game, and they were making their way down the field. But then Joe Flacco handed off to Jonathan Taylor, and he'd fumble the ball where the Vikings recovered. The Vikings would move in the Colts territory where Sam Darnold rolled out to his left and tried to force a tough ball in the end zone where he was picked by Indy Zaire Franklin, ending that drive with no points. Colts did nothing, gave it back to Minnesota, where they again got the ball down the field. But Indy's Grover Stewart blew up the offensive line, just like Super Grover back in the day, slamming Darnold to the ground. And in the slamming, Darnold fumbled the ball, where Indianapolis Kenny Moore scooped it up, scampering the pay dirt, scoring. Colts going up 7-0 early in the second. Then the Vikings tried to get some positives out of the first half, and their reliable rookie kicker, Will Reichard, attempted a field goal, but he'd miss it. After starting his career with 14 straight, he'd miss a chance to get the Vikings on the board. Minnesota got another chance with a field goal late in the first half, and Reichard would doink his field goal off the uprights, a 31-yarder, a chip shot. He went from no kicks to missing 2 kicks in one quarter, and with that miss, the Vikings trailed 7-0 going in the halftime. And in the second half, the Vikings again moved the ball effectively, and this time they'd finish a drive with points. Sam Darnold rolled out, this time to his right, and threw a ball into the corner of the end zone, finding receiver Jordan Addison, who made a ridiculous catch. He laid out to make the tough snag. A 4-yard touchdown on paper was a beauty, tying the game at 7. The Vikings again got the ball back without Indianapolis able to do anything offensively, and they'd kind of follow the suit of the previous drive, getting deep in the Colts territory. A big 40-yard play with Sam Darnold finding Justin Jefferson down the sideline, getting tackled just inside the 5. From there, Sam Darnold would find some time before finding Jalen Naylor on a touchdown, putting the Vikings up for the first time, 14-7 late in the third quarter. Early in the fourth, the Colts were looking to try and answer with a score of their own, but a combination of miscommunication and just a bad throw led to Joe Flacco's pass to Josh Downs getting undercut by Byron Murphy Jr., the third interception of the season for the Viking, and Sam Darnold told Flacco to hold his beer, throwing an interception right back, throwing it to Nick Cross in the secondary. So after 2 quick interceptions, the Colts were basically back where they started. From there, the offense would stall, and they settle for a Matt Gay field goal, cutting that lead to 14-10. Colts offense would fail to do a lot in the fourth quarter after that field goal, turning it over on downs. Minnesota would drive in the Colts territory again, killing clock along the way. And just before the 2-minute warning, Sam Darnold rolled out to find tight end Josh Oliver in a 14-yard touchdown, putting the Vikings up 21-10. Colts got some help from a defensive pass interference to try a 54-yard field goal. Matt Gay nailed it to make it 21-13 with 28 seconds left, making it a one-possession game, giving them some hope. But they had to declare an onside kick, and Minnesota's Justin Jefferson recovered the kick, clinching the comeback win for the Vikings, ending their brief 2-game losing streak as they moved to 6-2, sit just above the Packers in that tough NFC North. Sam Darnold played a little love-like in that game, showing the goods, but then throwing the bad with some bad picks. That's part of his game that Sam Darnold's kind of cut out this season for the most part. So he'll have to get back in the film room to work on that. But the main thing for the Vikings, they won the game and did so without looking their best. But a little bit of a buzzkill for the Vikings. Their amazing rookie kicker out of Alabama, Will Reichard, who missed the first 2 kicks of his career in this game. You could see him limping around, and I guess he was playing with some pain. He's got an injury that's got him moved to the IR, so he's going to be out at least 4 games. A shame for a guy who's been bringing consistency to the kicking game, something the Vikings are not really known for over the last bit. And it just shows those kicks were not regular kicks. He was hurt, so that explains him missing. In the meantime, Minnesota go with former XFL kicker John Parker Romo. And I'm all about 3-name kickers, so we'll see how he fits in with the Vikings team, who, like I said, seem to have a bit of trouble when it comes to kickers. And for Indianapolis, that wasn't a good loss. They had chances in this game, but that offense fizzled. I mean, you could say the what-if game here. What if Anthony Richardson started the game? Would he have done enough to win there? I mean, there are situations he could have done better, but you can't do that, you know? I mean, the defense did their part. They created turnovers. Hell, they even put points on the board. And when you have that combo, you usually had a pretty good chance to win the game. So it's got to be disappointing the Colts fell here, dropping excuse me, Colts dropping the 4-5 on the season, and they still have that uncertainty at quarterback. People will choose either quarterback and give their definitive reason why they think so. So head coach Steichen, he's got a bit of a tough decision ahead of him. Playoffs are still within reach, so he's got to go with who he thinks is going to help his team win off this year. I mean, no pressure. I think the 1 game benching in my mind is enough to give Anthony Richardson his job back. But it sounds like Steichen's going to roll the dice with the vet, at least for another game. But I'd like to see Richardson back out there, but we'll see. And that brings us to the Monday Night Football to wrap up the week. You had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rocking a 2-game losing streak, coming up short in a comeback against the Ravens, followed by losing a tough divisional game against the Falcons. While the home team, the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs, were going full Fred Durst and just kept on rolling, baby. The game wouldn't start with a lot of points, though. We wouldn't see the first points till late in the first quarter when Kansas City's Harrison Butker kicked the field goal to make it 3-0. The Bucs got the ball back, going on an impressive drive, capping it off with a Rachaad White touchdown from 7 yards out, putting them up for the first time at 7-3. As the second quarter went on, Patrick Mahomes showed off that amazing pocket presence before finding newcomer All-Pro DeAndre Hopkins on a big play, again inside the 5-yard line. A few plays later, Mahomes found Hopkins again, standing in the back of the end zone as Hopkins showed off the toe tap. The 1-yard touchdown pass put the Chiefs up 10-7. First touchdown for Hopkins in a Chiefs uniform, and he'd celebrate by doing a little shout out to the Remember the Titans movie, a little homage to the team he last played for before getting traded to Kansas City. The Bucs looked to answer with some points in the second half and got a good start with a 46-yard Bucky Irving kickoff return, getting great field possession, which would lead to Baker Mayfield throwing a nice ball to tight end Cade Otton. That score had put the Buccaneers back up 14-10. Chiefs offense failed to respond, and the Buccaneers would add more points, this time a Chase McLaughlin field goal, putting them up 17-10 with under 6 to go in the third. Down a touchdown, the Chiefs started moving the ball like the back-to-back Super Bowl champs should, getting to a third and down situation deep in Bucs territory. Mahomes rolled out to that sweet spot where you don't know if he's going to scramble for a first down or throw it, and he ended up pulling out like a push pass, finding running back Samaje Perine in the end zone. That 7-yard score tied the game at 17. After Tampa Bay's offense failed to answer, Mahomes would again lead his team in the Tampa territory, and again Mahomes would find newcomer DeAndre Hopkins. This touchdown was from 5 yards out, and he just looked like a rebounder in basketball, grabbing position before making the snag. That second touchdown connection put the Kansas City Chiefs up 24-17 with just under 4 to go. Tampa Bay got the ball back, and it wasn't Baker Mayfield's first rodeo. He'd methodically lead his team down the field, using great time management along the way. Get to the 1 yard line. From there, Baker Mayfield would find his wide receiver, just promoted from the practice squad, Ryan Miller. He'd catch his first NFL touchdown. And then the call was, do you go for 2 and try to beat the Chiefs now, or hit the extra point and go to overtime? Todd Bowles chose the latter, knocking the extra point through, and this game went to overtime. For OT, you'd get the classic coin toss, decide who'd get the ball. And as the Chiefs won the coin toss, you could see the disappointment on Baker Mayfield's face, because he's like, shit, I'm not getting the ball back, am I? And you'd see why. The Chiefs moved the ball in overtime with ease, getting deep in Tampa territory again. And from there, Kareem Hunt would punch in a 2-yard touchdown run. The walk-off rushing touchdown for Hunt sealed the 30-24 win for Kansas City, keeping those 1972 Miami Dolphins champagne bottles corked a little longer. The Chiefs now find themselves 8-0 and seem unbeatable. Even when they seem down and out, they just come back and win like it's no big deal. It's demoralizing. It reminds me as a kid watching WWF, and you'd see The Undertaker. The guy's literally in the coffin. You're like, he's done. Then the lights are out. He's up. Suddenly someone's getting chokeslam and tombstone. That's what the Chiefs do to opponents. I mean, give credit to Patrick Mahomes and Tampa Bay's Baker Mayfield. They came into this game tied with interceptions for the lead in interceptions, and neither of them threw one in this game, so kudos to that. But those Chiefs, they're something else. The Buccaneers, man, they're beat up, but it's impressive how they had a 7-point lead over the Chiefs going into the fourth, showing adversity to come back and force OT, just to lose. I mean, it's tough. Bowles stood by his decision to go for the single-point force OT. Again, you can't play the what-if game, but what's real, the Bucs dropped to 4-5, still riddled with injuries, and they're a few games back of the division-leading Falcons. And remember, the Falcons own the tiebreaker, so it's like they're behind an extra game here. All right, well, that was the crazy week that was. And before we jump into the picks up for the next week, the trade deadline came in the NFL Tuesday, November 6th. Leading up to the weekend, we saw some trades already go down, like the before-mentioned DeAndre Hopkins of Kansas City. But after the games on Sunday, more trades went down. The NFC West leading Arizona Cardinals traded a 6th-round pick to get pass rusher Baron Browning from the Broncos. He's dealt with injuries throughout his career, but if he could stay on the field, could help fill the gap by Dennis Gardeck, who suffered a season-ending injury a few weeks ago, picking up a knee injury. And speaking of pass rushers, we know the Detroit Lions are still trying to fill the void left by Aiden Hutchinson. He picked up that devastating injury that's taken him out for the season. Even though there's talks, if they make the Super Bowl, maybe he'll show up. That's a big if. But Detroit, they got a good one. They went and got Zadarius Smith, picking up the former Raven, Packer, and Viking, and most recently Brown, who they picked up in the trade. And all they had to give up was a 7th-round pick. Man, the Lions also got a 7th-round pick, and all the Browns got were a 5th-round pick and a 6th the following year. For a guy like Zadarius Smith, that's crazy. He's going to fit in great at Detroit. He's almost played on every NFC North team now. Little used running back in the other NFC North team, Chicago, Khalil Herbert. He's on the move. He was picked up by the Cincinnati Bengals for a 7th-round pick. Herbert wasn't not even in the mix in Chicago. He was behind DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. He wasn't touching the ball, so this will be good for him in the last year of his contract to try to boost that contract going into next season. And the Bengals, Zach Moss, another neck injury. You got to feel for that guy. He's out indefinitely. The Bengals have been relying on London, Ontario native Chase Brown, and it's a big win to get a guy like, Herbert in there. I think the drafts, they get a pick for someone they had no plans on using anyway. It's a win-win for everybody. The surprise Washington Commanders, they're going all in on the season. I mentioned how the Saints fired their head coach. They're now trading one of their best secondary players, Marshawn Lattimore. He's traded to the Commanders with a 5th-round pick. In exchange, the New Orleans Saints got a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick, and 5th-round pick next year. Lattimore has not played a full season since 2018, so there are injury concerns there, but if Lattimore can play up to his potential, he's a great addition to this Commanders defense and a nice vet for a young team there. The Steelers showed they're all in with Russell Wilson this season, trading a 5th-round pick to the New York Jets for wide receiver Mike Williams. Kind of dropped down the pecking order when Rodgers' BFF Devontae Adams came to town. So this gets Williams some more looks. It helps boost the Steelers' receiving core. And the Steelers, this one I don't know about. They added a great player to their great defense, only giving up a 7th-round pick to my Green Bay Packers for Preston Smith. I mean, that's good depth for an already good defense. I mean, I don't get it. I like Preston Smith. I mean, he only has 2.5 sacks this season. That's down from what he's been averaging the last few years, but we're going to miss him in Green Bay. That's a bummer. I mean, this 7th-round pick next season better be as good, I guess. It won't be, just letting you know. But his first game with Pittsburgh, you're gonna hear some broken record broadcasters there because they're going to say his name a lot, I imagine. I had mentioned how the Ravens have title hopes this season. They made a move to try and help their woeful pass defense, trading a 2026 7th-round pick to the Rams to acquire Tre'Davious White and a 7th-round pick in 2027. White hasn't been the same player since suffering an ACL injury followed by an Achilles injury, but I mean, he's still got enough in the tank. He's a good vet for the Ravens. I think it's a good move. A team that isn't exactly on anyone's Super Bowl prediction boards right now, the Dallas Cowboys made a move to try and bolster their receiving court, sending a 4th-round pick to the Carolina Panthers for Jonathan Mingo. I mean, no offense on Mingo, but this move was a surprise to some. He's had a disappointing year this far, and I mean, he's only 23 years old. He's a 2nd-round pick. Hasn't lived up to that potential, but I think that's what Jerry's rolling with, the potential. He's rolling the dice with potential, and we'll see what the Cowboys do with him. I mean, they gave up a 4th. And you're like, what's a 4th? But let's put it in relative here. The Jets gave up a 3rd for Devontae Adams. The Bills gave up a 3rd and 7th for Amari Cooper. The Ravens only gave up a 5th-round pick for Mingo's former teammate and leading receiver of the Panthers, Deontay Johnson. And DeAndre Hopkins, who I mentioned for the Chiefs, was picked up for a 5th. That could become a 4th. So you're putting Hopkins and Mingo on the same level? I don't know. I don't know what the Cowboys were doing there. Maybe they see something we don't. Jerry Jones has got his eye on something. But the biggest winners of the trade deadline for me, the Steelers. Getting Williams to help the offense, getting Preston Smith on the already good defense. Steelers are going all in. So let's jump to Week 10 now. We did the recap. We did the deadline. Let's look at Week 10 and who's posting an episode in time to make predictions for Thursday. This guy. That's a good thing. And it's a juicy Thursday, but before we do that, let's look in the past here at last week's picks. Not bad, 10-4, not too shabby. Could be better. What were the blemishes? I'm going to feel dumb saying this, but I picked the Saints to win. You know, I thought they were going to beat the Panthers. The Panthers said nope. Nope to the extent of getting a coach fired, Dennis Allen on the way out. I also thought the Browns would beat the Chargers, but the Browns, they just play to upset their fans. The Patriots, I had them beating the Titans, and it was close. Drake May with the magic made me almost look good with those buzzer-beating heroics, but in overtime, we know what happened. And my 4th and final incorrect pick was fully going with my heart, and it got broke. We had the Lions. They even bit my kneecaps on the way up. So I'm looking to try and get a perfect week yet. The best I've got is only 2 losses. This is 4. Not as good, so let's try to do better. And a quick mention of bye weeks, teams you're not going to see on the schedule this week. The Browns, Green Bay Packers, hopefully Love can get some rest and watch some video on not to throw interceptions. The Las Vegas Raiders, they have more time to contemplate who's going to be in it, who's calling the plays, who's throwing the ball. I don't know. So at least Pierce can live it up in Vegas and figure something out. And the Seahawks got a week off as well. They're going to have to think some stuff through. Their Jekyll and Hyde game is going to change. So now let's start with the Week 10 Thursday nighter. And I said it's a doozy. We're going to AFC North. Showdown between the Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens. Both teams coming off big wins where they dropped 40 burgers on the opponents. 4-5 Bengals lost a tight one at home to Baltimore in overtime back in Week 5. They were right in the game in that one, but just couldn't finish it. And there's extra pressure on Joe Burrow to try to make up for that win in Baltimore. T. Higgins is still banged up. I don't know if he's going to be good to go, but we saw some grittiness out of Mike Gesicki filling in nicely. The 6-3 Ravens, they've made another move, like I mentioned, snagging Deontay Johnson at the deadline. That'll help the receiving core, which is already amazing. But this team, it's all about running, the best 1-2 running punch in the league. No offense to Sonic and Knuckles in Detroit, but Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, man, they just do enough each game. I don't see like the Bengals being able to stop that. I see this being another close game, possibly needing overtime like the first matchup. But I have Baltimore winning at home and sweeping the season series with the Cincinnati Bengals. We go to the NFC, an NFC battle featuring two teams with a combined record of 4-14. And the NFL is like, fuck it, let's send this game to Munich. The game will be in Germany, played at the Allianz Arena where Bayern Munich play. And these are two teams hungry for more wins, the 2-7 Giants and the 2-7 Panthers. The home team, I guess in this instance, the Panthers, are coming off only their second win of the season, only the third win in Bryce Young's NFL career, putting last year's number one overall pick at 3-17 for his career. And the Panthers, not exactly helping the youngster out, trading away Deontay Johnson and Jonathan Mingo. But it sounded like those dudes didn't really want to be in the locker room anyway, so maybe an addition by subtraction. We'll see. We'll see what Young can do to find his younger guys stepping up, like the rookies, first round pick Xavier Leggett riding in on the Cowboy, or you have undrafted rookie out of Holy Cross, Jalen Coker. But in saying that, all these praise about the Panthers, I don't think they're going to beat the Giants. I mean, the Giants haven't done a lot of good this season, but one thing they're good at is getting to the quarterback, leading the NFL with 35 sacks. That's not going to help Bryce Young, who's prone to make mistakes under pressure. So, I mean, the Panthers have defensive playmakers too. They could make Daniel Jones fuck up to the point of fucking up. But I think he's going to be a little better than Bryce Young in this one. And I see the Giants picking up their third victory of the season and their first on German soil. We'll go to an interconference matchup featuring the 2-7 Patriots and the 4-4 Chicago Bears. Both teams coming off tough losses and in different ways. The Patriots had the highs of forcing overtime on an amazing play and the lows of losing in overtime. So the Bears went into the desert and got beaten by the Cardinals, a game where the Bears offense lived on field goals and gave up costly plays on the defensive end. So you have Caleb Williams picking up that ankle injury at the end of the game. He's supposed to be good to go, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. And he'll battle number 3 overall pick in the draft, Drake May. So battle the two of the top three picks in the NFL draft this past year. I'm expecting a physical game. I'm going to think the Bears are going to do a little more to bounce back from their loss, and I see Chicago securing the home win, giving another loss to the Patriots there. We got another big NFC matchup, the 4-4 San Francisco 49ers, who are coming off a much-needed bye week, and the 4-5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are coming off that tight OT matchup against Kansas City on Monday night. The week off gave the 49ers a chance to heal up a bit, and did I have to rub my eyes? We saw Christian McCaffrey at practice. It's been a long time since we saw that. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go, but even seeing CMC on the field, very nice. The 49ers are still battling injuries. No Brandon Ayuk's out for the year. They got playmakers still, though. They have guys out there, and this well-rested 49er team, I think they're going to feel good for a minute going into this game. But once they're in the mix with this Buccaneers team, they're going to realize, shit, we're in a dogfight. Both teams need to get wins to try and stay in their division races. And I think Baker Mayfield will play like he did last game in relation to not throwing an interception. And I think that's going to be the difference in this one. Brock Purdy's going to make plays with his legs, reminding everyone that he can do that. But he's going to have one of those, I shouldn't have thrown that balls. That's really going to ruin the game for the 49ers and prompt more conversations on, is Purdy that guy? I mean, he's putting up better numbers this year, but look at their record, right? So I have in Tampa Bay picking up the win and ending their current 3-game losing streak. Going in with the Baker. Got the Broncos and Chiefs. Always a tasty AFC West matchup. Hate each other. The 5-4 Broncos, they head in the Arrowhead to take on the undefeated 8-0 Kansas City Chiefs for the first of the 2 games they play this season. The Broncos had their 2-game winning streak snapped in Baltimore. Let them leaving town with their tails between their legs a bit, but they'll bounce back quickly to try and take down the back-to-back Super Bowl champs. Bo Nix is really impressed lately, and he's looked like a vet out there. Maybe not so much in the Ravens game. He made some rookie mistakes there, but other than that, he's looked like a vet out there. I'm expecting him to bounce back and play a little better than he did last game. And when he gets running, this team just seems to be better, Not just the running backs on Denver, but when Bo Nix is going, they're just that gets them to another level. And what are you going to say about the Chiefs? They look vulnerable at times, but you can't close them out. I mean, this team hasn't lost since Christmas of last year. The Mahomes D-Hop connection, it's going to get better. And like most division games in the NFL, I think it's going to be close. We're going to be like, oh man, I think the Broncos might pull this off. And then Mahomes will scramble. You'll make it look like he's going to run. And he'll throw a fucking chest pass or something to Noah Gray for a touchdown. And the Chiefs will win. They'll go to 9-0. And that's what's going to happen. I'm done picking against the Chiefs, man. They're going to win this one. You got an AFC battle with the AFC East leading Buffalo Bills at 7-2, heading into Indianapolis to take on the 4-5 Colts. Bills rocking a 4-game winning streak, and they had that tight one against Miami last week. The Colts have a good defense, and they'll get to Josh Allen, but I don't think it's going to be enough to take the Bills down. The only thing that can hurt the Bills is their calendar. I think with Kansas City coming up the following week, some players are already going to have their eyes on that game. So you're going to tell them, don't look, but it's like, hey, the Chiefs, that's who we got to beat next week. So hopefully this isn't a trap game for Buffalo. And the Colts are going with old Joe again. Announced head coach Shane Steichen sticking with the 39-year-old Joe Flacco. Not sure if it's a disciplinary-based, maturity level-based, performance-based. I don't know why Anthony Richardson still isn't out there. But Joe Flacco's fit in the offense, and granted he didn't look good against Minnesota, but how much better is he going to look against Buffalo? I think he's going to look better. Better enough to win? I don't think so. I see the Bills extending their winning streak to 5 games and putting Steichen back to the quarterback decision on should I play AR or what? I think he's earned enough time on the bench. Put Richardson back out there. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Steelers and Commanders. This could potentially be the game of the weekend. Wouldn't have thought that when you looked at the schedule and start the season. 2 division leaders facing off, the AFC North leading Pittsburgh Steelers at 6-2, visiting the NFC East leading Washington Commanders at 7-2. Both teams got involved with some last-minute trade deadline deals, as I alluded to. And I mentioned how I thought the Steelers really rocked at getting Mike Williams and Preston Smith, and the Steelers have been rolling 3 in a row after losing their only 2 games of the season. Russell, last name Wilson, is fitting into the offense seamlessly. He's making great plays out there, reminding us of the Seattle Glory years. And the Steelers, they just seem to play the same way they have for decades. Smash mouth football, good defense. Check. Preston Smith, like I said, you're going to hear his name a lot as everyone concentrates on TJ Watt, as they should. One of the best players in the NFL on either side of the ball. With the great talk of the Steelers, they're going into D.C. to play one of the surprises in the NFL. The Commanders are on a 3-game winning streak of their own, bolstering their secondary with Marshawn Lattimore. I mentioned earlier, Jaden Daniels, he's the real deal. No question on how good this dude is. He's been one of my favorite players to watch this year. He's making connections with the receiving core. They're leading the NFC East for a reason. This running game, it's a bit by committee right now. Their running back one may be coming back soon. Brian Robinson Jr. missed the last game. He's fighting a hamstring injury. But Austin Eckler's back in there. Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, these guys are all doing it. A straight-up running by committee group. And they're all different in their own way, and they're all effective. And Jaden Daniels, he's still getting yards with his feet. He's not out of the injury. He's not out of the woods yet with that rib injury. So he's got to be smart. Be careful, slide, all that stuff, sounding like a worried mother here, but you got to protect yourself. These aren't college players. These guys might knock you out of the game. So I think it's going to come down to the wire of the quarterbacks of years past and a quarterback of the future. And we know what happened in real life with Russell Wilson in future. I think Russell came out a winner in that one, and I think Russell's going to come out a winner in this one. I have the Steelers going into Washington and giving the Commanders their 3rd loss of the season. Vikings and Jaguars. You have 2 teams going in completely opposite directions. The 6-2 Vikings heading into Florida to take on the 2-7 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Vikings have looked great this season and look to continue their winning ways to try and keep pace with the Lions in the tough NFC North. They have a good running game with Aaron Jones, and man, that receiving core. 3 touchdowns, 3 different players, and none of them were Justin Jefferson. That just shows you the depth the Vikings have at receiver. Sam Darnold, he's been his own worst enemy at times. And if he can play like the 2024 Darnold that we've seen earlier in the year, the Vikings will be in good shape. And it's going to be a little bit of a homecoming for Minnesota's Cam Robinson. The left tackle was just traded from the Jaguars last week, so it'll be a little bit of a homecoming for him. The Jaguars, they've been close the last few games, losing to the Packers by 3, losing to Philly by 5. I mean, tough losses that show the Jags have potential. But they're just failing to meet expectations across the board. But with that being said, I still see them putting up a good fight, but losing another crushing one. I have Minnesota winning their 2nd in a row, beating the Jaguars in another tight game that's going to crush their fans. And as I said earlier, that seat under Doug Peterson's getting a little warmer. I don't know how much longer he's going to be running the show. We got an NFC South matchup featuring two fan bases that feel very differently about their teams. The division-leading 6-3 Falcons, winners 2 in a row, and looking to sweep the 2-7 New Orleans Saints with the win. Kirk Cousins has looked great in Atlanta, but I think this game it's going to be about the running backs. The 1-2 punch of Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. They're ready to blow up here. And again, another flying mascot doing it on the ground. Well, that's what the Falcons can do. It's not always about Kirk. This running game's legit. And it just sets up the play action. Everything wins, except for the Saints, I think, in this case. They're going with interim head coach, special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi, taking the lead of the club and trying to end that 7-game losing streak. Maybe the coaching change will give a little spark to the struggling Saints. And like I said, division games in the NFL, they're always what's a good word there? They're good slugfest. Sorry, I was finding a word there for fighting. Should have just looked up Russell Crowe. But I don't see why Atlanta doesn't win this game and continue to take that stranglehold on the NFC South. We have the 2-6 Tennessee Titans coming off only their second win of the season, winning that OT battle against New England, and they're crossing the country to take on the 5-3 Los Angeles Chargers, who the Chargers have a 2-game winning streak, and they've just been getting it done, even though they haven't been blowing teams away. The Harbaugh and Greg Norman connection, it's starting to leave its print on the Chargers offense, and it's been great for J.K. Dobbins. His numbers have gone up with the increased usage in the running game, and that makes things easier for Justin Herbert, which is key. Herbert needs to stay on the field. The team goes as he goes, and he's going to get pressured by a very physical Titans defense. The Titans defense allows a league-low 269 yards per game. So it's not the defense that's killing the Titans here. So if Herbert can stay upright enough to finish this game and get that running game going, they should cruise the victory. But Mason Rudolph's pulled off surprise wins before, and if they can get Tony Pollard going in this game, it could be really tight. But I do have the Chargers winning this one. I went against the Chargers last week, as I did. I thought that's a trap game the Chargers lose, which is much like this one. They're coming in favorites, and they could throw up a stinker. But I think they're going to be a little more of a thinker than stinker in this one, and they're going to pull off the win. See the Chargers winning at home. A game that I think could be one of the best games of the afternoon. Another interconference battle featuring the new look 3-6 New York Jets and the NFC West leading 5-4 Cardinals. The Jets are coming off a big win over another division leader, Houston, last Thursday, and Garrett Wilson made some unreal catches, and Rodgers looked to be a little more comfortable in the offense. He's obviously a little banged up, but he's looking better, and I see that rekindled connection with Devontae Adams getting better, reunited, and it feels so good. And the Cardinals are winners of 3 in a row. They've really been getting that running game going, making things easier for Kyler Murray. And I'm still surprised at the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s numbers. I thought they'd be a little higher, but there's still a lot of season left. But like I mentioned every time, I have the Cardinals sneaking into the playoffs. However, I don't have them winning this game. I see the Jets taking it. I see Aaron Rodgers going into the desert, not to take ayahuasca, but to go in there and get a Jets win. See touchdowns to Wilson and Adams. They're each getting one this game, and I see the Jets getting that bandwagon back together. So they win their second game in a row for the first time in this season, and it'll be a tough home loss for Arizona, but they're going to bounce back from it. They'll do well, but I don't see them winning that game. You have an NFC East battle that's always a fun one, but this time around it's lacking some luster. Dak Prescott's out of the lineup for the 3-5 Cowboys, dealing with a hamstring injury that took him out of the last game, so they're rolling with the Cooper Rush. And the Cowboys may have a limited CeeDee Lamb, who's battling a shoulder injury picked up in the last game as well. Not looking good for a banged-up team to be hosting a 6-2 Philadelphia Eagles squad. Eagles, despite their own mistakes, pulled off a win last week, their 4th in a row. Saquon Barkley has just been killing it. I see him going bonkers against the Cowboys, and Dallas not being able to do anything about it. Cooper will make some big plays for the Cowboys, maybe even get newcomer Jonathan Mingo involved. But it's not going to be enough for the Cowboys with one of the worst running games in the league to beat the Eagles. Eagles go in the big D and walk out with the dub, giving Jerry Jones some more heartbreak. The Sunday nighter, you have the fun interconference matchup, a few of those this week. Best team in the NFC North leading 7-1 Detroit Lions, head to Houston to take on the AFC South leading Houston Texans at 6-3. The Texans are coming off that tough loss to the Jets, where they also lost Stephon Diggs for the season with an ACL injury. Nico Collins is getting closer to returning, but I don't think he's going to be ready to go in this one. CJ Stroud's also a little beat up out there, so I'm just hoping he survives against this pass rush. The Lions, they'll come at you. They're straight up Lions. It's in the name. I don't think there's much defensively Houston can do to counter this juggernaut of the Lions offense. Like I said, Sonic and Knuckles, they're going to run buck wild, giving Jared Goff that wicked play action when he has that going. he's pretty unbeatable, And they have Jameson Williams returning from 2-game suspension, more playmakers. I hate to say it as a NFC North fan, not of the Lions, but I think they're going to win big. They're going to beat up on Houston and take the win and go 8-1. It might look close for a bit, but the Lions like to run away with the games, and I think that's what's going to happen. And how do you wrap Week 10 up? Well, with Monday Night Football, of course, and that features the AFC and NFC matchup again that we've been going with a lot this weekend. You got the 2-6 Miami Dolphins, losers of their last 3, going to LA to take on the 4-4 Los Angeles Rams. And the Rams have been going in the other direction, winning 3 in a row and doing so in impressive waves. There was talk are the Rams going to trade Cooper Kupp a few weeks ago? Hell no, they're winning. He's sticking around. Puka Nacua doesn't get ejected this time. They'll be even better. But how about Demarcus Robinson stepping up the last few weeks, including 2 touchdowns last week, featuring that one-handed catch to seal the win in OT? The Rams are playing great, and they're making up for those early season struggles. I know Tua Tagovailoa is back, and the Dolphins have looked more Dolphin-like, more in the earlier season Dolphin form, but I don't see them doing enough to beat the Rams. They're going to keep it close and maybe even lead in the fourth quarter, but we know what Matthew Stafford can do late. 36 is the new 26, and he's going to lead the Rams to the Monday Night Football win. And there you have it. You got the Week 9 recap of the anarchy that went down. You have my picks, and you have a little interest in what happened at the trade deadline. I don't want to say must win yet, but for a few teams, it's getting pretty close to must win here. And hey, football at least distracts you from politics for a hot second, so that's good, right? So get out there, watch the football, enjoy it. It's been good, and we have some good games coming up. So thanks again for tuning in. Ren City out.